Every moment we live is a fragile leap across the threshold between nothingness and existence, teetering on the edge of the unknown. It's a space where reality blurs, and the boundary between being and non-being becomes almost invisible. What if first told you that understanding this border could change the way you see everything? Who we are, what it means to exist, and what lies beyond the limits of perception. Stick with me, because exploring this edge isn't just about philosophy. It's about uncovering the very essence of reality itself, defining nothingness and being. At the heart of philosophical inquiry, the concepts of nothingness and being serve as fundamental pillars that challenge our understanding of existence itself. Nothingness, often perceived as the absence of anything, no matter, no energy, no substance, presents a paradoxical enveloping void, yet it is not merely emptiness. Instead, it acts as a boundary or a borderland between what is and what is not, a liminal space where the potential for creation and destruction coexists. In scientific terms, vacuum states or the deep voids in space resemble this kind of nothingness, though even those regions contain quantum fluctuations or virtual particles, complicating the absolute absence of anything tangible. It is this ambiguous state, that something can emerge from what appears to be nothing, that intrigues both physicists and philosophers alike. Being, on the other hand, refers to existence itself, the state of having presence or reality. It encompasses everything from tangible objects like trees and planets to intangible entities such as thoughts and emotions. Unlike nothingness, being is characterized by its multiplicity and richness. It allows for change, growth, and interaction. Philosophically, being is often linked to existentials and ontological frameworks that explore what it means for something to be. The ancient Greeks, particularly Parmenides and Heraclitus, debated whether being was a static, unchanging reality or a constantly flowing process. Today, debates about being extend into fields like quantum physics, phenomenology, and existentialism, each offering different views but all recognizing that being is the foundation of reality, a state that sustains and manifests everything we perceive. The boundary between nothingness and being is not merely a line, but a zone of intense transformation and philosophical reflection. For example, in the context of quantum theory, the vacuum state is not an absolute nothing, but a seething sea of potentialities that can give rise to particles out of seeming emptiness. This blurs the line sharply because it presents a universe where even the absence of matter and energy is teeming with latent possibilities. Philosophers often interpret this boundary as a space of pre-creation, where the potential for existence is barely distinguishable from non-existence. These ideas suggest that the transition from nothingness to being is neither abrupt nor purely definable, but a complex process that hinges on the interpretation of what constitutes existence. Such reflections directly challenge our sensory perceptions and logical constructs. We tend to think of nothingness as a void and being as the fullness of reality, yet modern thought nudges us towards seeing these notions as points on a continuum rather than polar opposites. The edge between them might be more like a zone of indetermination, an ongoing process where the potential for existence is quietly latent within the void, waiting for conditions to shift and spark the emergence of being. It prompts questions about whether the universe originated from absolute nothingness, or whether what we perceive as nothing is actually an incomplete or misunderstood aspect of being itself. This boundary is not fixed, but fluid, and it invites a reconsideration of how existence and non-existence are interconnected at the deepest levels of reality. The philosophical boundary, exploring limits. The boundary between nothingness and being is a question that has intrigued philosophers for centuries. It challenges our understanding of existence itself and pushes us to consider whether nothing is truly a state or merely a conceptual placeholder. In the realm of metaphysics, this limit often corresponds to the edge of potential and actual reality, where the distinction between existence and non-existence begins to blur. At this boundary, traditional categories of being lose clarity, forcing us to confront the fundamental nature of reality in ways that are both abstract and profoundly personal. This threshold is not merely a theoretical line, but a zone of intense philosophical inquiry. It raises questions about whether nothing can exist independently or if it is simply the absence of something. Some thinkers argue that true nothingness is impossible, an absolute vacuum that defies the laws of physics and logic alike, while others suggest that it is a necessary concept for understanding the origins of universe-wide phenomena. For example, in quantum physics, the vacuum state contains fluctuations and virtual particles, revealing that nothing is not truly null but a dynamic field of potentialities. This scientific perspective echoes philosophical debates about whether the universe emerged from a state of absolute nothingness or from a fluctuation within a pre-existing backdrop. Exploring the limits of this boundary also brings existential significance. It touches on the human perception of mortality, the fear of annihilation, and the allure of finding meaning at the edge of emptiness. Some philosophies see this border as a zone of transition, where individual consciousness dissolves into the infinite, or where the material world bathes in the void silence, revealing that existence might be a temporary phenomenon, a fleeting burst within an eternal nothingness. The inquiry thus becomes one about the nature of identity, continuity, and the possibility of an afterlife or spiritual realm beyond the finite boundaries of being. The boundary itself, therefore, takes on a poetic and moral dimension, symbolizing the unknown that drives both philosophical inquiry and human hope. In practical terms, understanding the limits between nothingness and being influences modern cosmology, existential psychology, and even artificial intelligence. The search for origins of the universe, whether through the Big Bang or multiverse theories, relies heavily on conceptualizing what preceded physical reality. Similarly, discussions around consciousness often hinge on whether awareness can exist without a physical substrate, an echo of the boundary concept. Such questions expand beyond pure theory, permeating technological advancements and life philosophies, reminding us that this boundary remains one of the most profound and elusive perimeters in human thought. Existence and non-existence, intertwined realities. At the heart of philosophical inquiry lies the delicate boundary where existence merges into non-existence, a threshold that defies simple understanding. When you consider the concept of a vacuum or a void, spaces in the universe that appear empty, they're seldom truly devoid of activity or potential. Quantum mechanics reveals that even nothingness teems with fleeting particles popping into and out of existence, illustrating that the line separating presence and absence is remarkably blurry at microscopic levels. This intertwining challenges our everyday perceptions. What we interpret as nothingness often contains the seed of future existence, emphasizing that reality is far more fluid than it seems. Human consciousness struggles to fully grasp these intertwined states. We tend to think of existence as something concrete and tangible, while non-existence always lurks on the periphery as a shadowy opposite. But beyond philosophy, there are real-world implications. Cosmology, for example, explores how the universe might have originated from a state of non-being, a singularity before the Big Bang. Though scientists debate the nature of that event, the proposal that the universe emerged from a void pushes us to contemplate reality not in absolutes, but as a spectrum where being and non-being continually influence each other. The idea that something can arise from nothing, under certain conditions, profoundly challenges our assumptions about causality and permanence. In practical terms, the intertwining of existence and non-existence influences various disciplines, from theoretical physics to existential philosophy. Artists and writers have long explored this boundary creatively, depicting the void as a space teeming with possibility and silent potential. Think of stories where characters confront the edge of reality itself, moments when the fabric of the universe seems to fray, revealing glimpses of an underlying nothingness. Such experiences evoke a sense of awe and destabilization, reminding us that the very act of questioning existence opens pathways to understanding the profound, interconnected dance between being and not being. Ultimately, the border between existence and non-existence isn't a strict divide, but a dynamic interface, an active zone where physical laws, consciousness, and abstract concepts intermingle. It compels us to reconsider whether nothingness, is simply the absence of something or a realm filled with unseen potential. The more we probe into the fabric of reality, the clearer it becomes that these states are not opposites but complements, each giving meaning to the other, shaping the universe in a perpetual cycle of emergence and collapse. Questions of the infinite and the void. The concepts surrounding the infinite and the void have long fascinated both philosophers and scientists, propelling human curiosity to imagine what lies beyond the tangible universe. When contemplating the infinite, one is often drawn into notions of boundlessness, endless possibilities, and the ungraspable nature of infinity itself. The universe, as vast as it appears, raises questions about whether it is truly infinite or if there are limits that we simply have not yet observed. In cosmology, for instance, some models suggest a multiverse, an infinite collection of universes that extend beyond what we can perceive, challenging traditional notions of reality and space. These theories push the boundaries of human understanding, forcing us to confront the idea that reality might extend infinitely in ways that defy our intuition. Meanwhile, the void represents the absence of matter, energy, and even space itself, an emptiness that sometimes appears to be a mere backdrop for existence, but more often emerges as a profound philosophical dilemma. The void isn't merely empty space. It can be thought of as the edge of existence itself, where all familiar concepts dissolve into nothingness. Questions arise around what the void truly is. Is it a state of non-being, or does it possess some hidden structure or potential? Quantum physics touches on this enigma through the concept of vacuum fluctuations, temporary appearances of particles in seemingly empty space, suggesting that the void is not truly empty at all, but a seething backdrop of potentiality. This boundary between nothing and something, or essence and absence, sparks debates about the origins of existence. If the universe emerged from a state of absolute nothingness, then how can something come from nothing? Philosophers and physicists alike wrestle with whether the concept of nothingness is even coherent or if our understanding is limited by the language and mental frameworks we have. The notion that the universe could arise spontaneously from a quantum fluctuation, for instance, complicates the classical view of causality and creation. It prompts questions about whether the void is a fertile ground for creation or simply an illusion, perhaps the ultimate boundary where the concept of creation itself ceases to have meaning. Thinking about the infinite and the void also leads to more existential questions. What does it mean to be finite in the context of the infinite? How can consciousness grasp something so vast and intangible? The human mind struggles to quantify or truly comprehend infinite regress, an endless chain of cause and effect, and the paradoxes that come with it. Likewise, the void challenges our understanding of existence, forcing us to consider whether non-being carries its own form of presence or significance. It remains one of the greatest mysteries, a liminal space where scientific inquiry and philosophical reflection converge, probing the possibilities that exist just beyond the edge of nothingness. Usnovnoy, Rusgil 5. In exploring the boundary between nothingness and being, thinkers often confront the fundamental question of how existence originates from what appears to be non-existence. This border is not merely a metaphysical line, but a complex interplay of concepts that challenge our understanding of reality. On one side, nothingness suggests an absence of matter, energy, or even potential, an absolute void without form or purpose. On the other side lies being, which embodies everything we experience: consciousness, matter, time, and space. The transition from nothing to something remains one of the greatest enigmas in philosophy, physics, and cosmology. It pushes us to question whether the universe emerged through a spontaneous fluctuation in a vacuum or whether other unseen principles are at work behind the scenes. Within this context, the concept of the quantum vacuum becomes particularly intriguing. Quantum mechanics suggests that even what we perceive as empty space is teeming with fleeting particles and energy fluctuations. These quantum jitters imply that nothingness is not an absolute void, but a field of potentiality that can give rise to particles and matter spontaneously. For example, phenomena like virtual particles popping in and out of existence challenge our classical notions of emptiness. They hint at a deep link between the nothingness that seems absolute and the being that manifests from it. The idea that reality might emerge from a quantum foam, an energetic substratum of interconnected fluctuations, narrows the gap between nothing and something, suggesting that the transition might be rooted in the probabilistic nature of quantum physics. Philosophers have long debated whether the boundary itself is a real, measurable frontier or a conceptual construct. Some argue that beyond the threshold of being lies an absolute void, impossible to comprehend or even imagine, while others believe that nothingness is inherently a relative state, defined only in relation to something else. The edge of nothingness, in this sense, could be a metaphor for an ultimate limit of human cognition, something that cannot be fully grasped but only approached through indirect evidence and analogy. It acts as a horizon, constantly shifting as our scientific tools and philosophical insights deepen. The more we probe the universe's origins and its quantum fabric, the more nuanced our understanding becomes. It shows that the boundary isn't fixed, but a dynamic zone where potentiality transforms into actuality, reflecting the universe's fundamental churn between chaos and order. In practical terms, this exploration impacts not only cosmology and theoretical physics, but also our interpretive frameworks for existence itself. Whether contemplating multiverses, brain worlds, or the origins of consciousness, the edge of nothingness invites a perspective where the universe's foundation isn't a static point, but an ongoing process of emergence. This intersection of the void with substance opens pathways for new scientific theories and philosophical paradigms, challenging us to rethink what it truly means to be. It's a reminder that boundaries between nothing and being, chaos and cosmos, are often less rigid than they seem, continually blurring at the edges of understanding and perception. As we stand on the precipice between nothingness and being, it's fascinating to consider how this boundary shapes our understanding of existence itself. We've explored the thin line where potential turns into reality, where chaos begins to give way to structure, and how the mystery of this transition invites us to reflect on our place in the cosmos. It's a reminder that even at the edge of nothing, there's a universe of possibilities waiting to be uncovered. If this sparked your curiosity, stay tuned for more deep dives into the mysteries that define our reality, as we continue to explore the unknown pathways that push the limits of understanding. Thanks for sharing this journey. Your presence makes the voyage all the more meaningful. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and engage with us. You never know what other boundaries will cross together next.